Well, hello and welcome to episode 208 of Drink the Movies. I'm Brian here, as always, with Michaela. And Michaela, as has been the case for the last couple of years, this week we're going to be talking about the Oscars Best Picture winner, the 97th Oscars Best Picture winner, Anora.
We are indeed going to be talking about the Oscar winner this week. I'm super excited. We've covered four now, I think, right? We covered Coda,
Hmm.
which was a really fun. I've never been so glad to be so wrong at who was going to win Best Picture, right? I think I picked what Howl at the Dog or Power of the Dog, and Coda totally won.
Howl of the Dog.
Uh,
Yeah. Hmm.
something I don't know. You could tell how memorable it was. And then with Everything Everywhere All at Once, and then of course last year's Oppenheimer. But this year we're going to talk about uh, Anora, which is really exciting because not only was it probably one of my favorite movies of this year, but we both, I think, actually, I picked it to win. You picked Conclave to win, but you
I
still
did. Yeah.
won the overall Oscar. You pick them between the two of us. Just throwing that factoid out there for everybody.
That's right. I'm going to make sure that Michaela brings that up as often as possible over the next year. We'll see. No, I'm just kidding. There actually was Nomadland was the first Oscar Best Picture winner in the history of Drink the Movies, although we did not cover that. Maybe we'll have to go back and take a look at that in a a redo there, as we were just newcomers to the scene. But yeah, we've covered a lot of these Best Picture winners, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. And we're going to be doing something that we have done starting back in Coda and covering the Fanny's Best Picture winning cocktail here, and very excited to do that because the crew over at Fanny's is amazing. We have a little bit of history with Fanny's going back. We're going to talk about that once we get into the cocktail section. So, Michaela, let's talk about Anora. We're going to get into it. We're going to make some beet vodka. We're going to do all of those things. But before we do that, we need to take a quick break, and we'll be right back to mix up this week's drink. All right. So to get into our Best Picture cocktail, we're going to take a trip to Los Angeles, California. We're going to go to Fanny's. Fanny's is the restaurant. It's located in the Academy Museum. And I think that the way that this got started, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Michaela, but you and I were sitting up in your movie room one night. It was close to Oscars time, I think, or maybe Oscars had even happened by this point. And I stumbled across an article, and it had a list of cocktails that Fanny's had made. It was like in a local, like, LA newspaper or something. And I was like, hey, look at this. These are all of the Oscar cocktails. They had an email address at the bottom. And being, the outgoing personality of the two of us, you said, I'm going to email him and get that recipe for Coda because that thing is beautiful. And that's
Yeah,
exactly what you did. And that started our long-standing admiration, I guess. Adoration. I don't know what the right word is there, but our love of Fanny's at the Academy Museum and especially their Oscar cocktails.
that's right. Shout out to them. They've always been so sweet. So immediately I got a note back, not only with like the ingredients of the drink, but like instructions of how to make it. And that was super cool because they didn't have to do that. We want to give credit where credit is due, right? And so we absolutely have done that. But shout out to everybody over there. We one of the highlights of my life was actually going there and sampling their drinks. They have an amazing drink menu. It's not always an Oscar menu, but it's always movie driven, and it is awesome. So if you're ever in the LA area, even if you don't go to the museum, which you should actually do, but even
Hmm.
if you don't do that, stop in, have a cocktail at the bar, say hi. Say hi from Drink the Movies. Tell them Mike and Michaela and Brian sent you, and that'll be yeah, it'll be really good. But I'm really excited about this cocktail because it is all of my favorite things. It's pink, it's got
Hmm.
cherries in it, it
Hmm.
looks decadent and pink. It's very pink.
It's very pink. It starts and ends with pink, and it's paying homage to your, I think, your favorite film of last year, or at least one of your
Yes.
very favorites from last year, Nora. So, yeah, this cocktail it is crafted by Louisiana. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. You can find her account. It's at A Drink Divine on Instagram. She's making the cocktails there at Fanny's. Came up, I think, with this whole cocktail menu, but shout out, go give that a follow, go check that out because she was doing something extra awesome this year. Listed out all of the cocktails with a beautiful picture, had all of the ingredients, and then actually went on to, kind of close to Oscar night. I think those are still kind of coming out of actually, crafting those cocktails there at the bar at Fanny's, so, which is amazing. So we get the little menu sheets here, and according to this, going into the Honora cocktail is crop vodka, red wine, lemon, rose, beets, and egg white. So that's kind of your main components there of the cocktail. And then the video kind of gets into that a little bit further. So it starts out here with some vodka. We actually talked about this a little bit this week in the lobby bar, so you can go check that out. But let's give a quick recap of how that went down, Michaela, because we need some beet infused vodka.
You do.
Crop vodka was the one that was recommended. It's just an organic, gluten-free vodka. It's really good if you can get a bottle of that. We couldn't find any of that, so we just went with our standby vodka here at To Drink the Movies headquarters. But tell everyone how you got the beets into the vodka.
Right. So you're gonna go and get some fresh beets. Do not use pickled beets. I don't recommend that. Fresh beets. You're gonna put on some gloves. You're gonna skin them like with a potato peeler. Then you're gonna cut them into pieces and you're gonna put them in like a jar of vodka. And then you're gonna let that sit. Now, I let mine sit for about 24 hours. Um, you could do less, you could do more, depending on how beet forward you want this vodka to be. Ours was very beet forward. I think in the
24 hours is
future,
pretty beet forward, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So in the future, I might do like 8 or 12 hours. It's going to be bright, bright pink. It's certainly not going to, I don't think the color is really going to be affected by how long you leave the beets in there, but it's definitely going to be more beety tasting if you do it overnight. Now, I don't know exactly how Fanny's infused there. So if anybody knows, Luciana, if you want to hit us up with those details, I'd love to know. But that's how I did mine.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you have your beet infused vodka there, and then we're just going to go ahead and assemble this cocktail. So go ahead and grab yourself a coupe glass, fill it up with some ice, set that to the side so it gets nice and chilled out, or you can keep one in the freezer, which is what I've been doing actually as of late, Michaela.
Ooh.
Go ahead and grab your shaker tin, and then the amounts that we used for our cocktail goes as follows. So into that goes 1/2 of an ounce of simple syrup, 1/2 of an ounce of freshly squeezed lemon juice, roughly a 1/2 an ounce of egg white. It's about half of an egg's white, half of an egg's worth of egg white there. 1/4 of an ounce of rose liqueur, and then 1.75 ounces of that beet infused vodka. Go ahead and give that a dry shake. Just shake it a few times there. It's going to get that nice and frothy going, and then you can go ahead and add some ice and give it another shake. And then you're going to go ahead and strain that into your coupe glass. You're going to get a beautiful little foam layer on top there of this ultra pink cocktail. And then what you're going to take is, I don't know, about 1/4 of an ounce to a 1/2 an ounce of red wine, kind of float that on top. We just used just a basic, kind of budget friendly Cabernet. You could use any kind of red wine you want here because what you're really looking for is just kind of the aesthetic of having that little red wine layer. You don't taste too much of the wine coming through. I didn't think in the cocktail. And then you're going to go ahead and garnish that with a couple of cherries, the maraschino bright cherries, of course, bright red, just like Anora would just like Anora would want there, I do believe. And you can go ahead and throw some shimmer on top of that to complete the aesthetic if you want. Sip and enjoy. So, Michaela, we mixed up a couple of these last night. It was pretty good. What did you think about this one?
So at first I was real worried, because I like beets, but I was real worried about this beet forward, uh, vodka. Um, but halfway through it, I was like, this is actually real good. I was worried, um, that it was going to be too sour with the lemon juice because we were kind of trying to play with the ingredient levels, right? As we are making this cocktail, trying to figure that out. But I'm really happy with the way the one that we set up did. It cleaned the palate really nicely. It wasn't too beady. At first, that was all I tasted, but after a couple of sips, it really kind of finished much better than I thought it was going to. I really like
Hmm.
this, and I made about 85 ounces of beet flavored vodka. So I'm gonna be drinking like I don't know. I'm gonna be drinking this drink for the next month. I have a feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have any other beat ideas out there, send them our way for sure. But yeah, this was really nice. It's very soft there because it has that egg white, so you get that like creamy kind of layer to it. You get a little bit of like floral notes from the rose liqueur. It's not like
Hmm.
overpowering. You don't taste a lot of it, but you definitely can smell it, the aroma of that coming off, and then yeah, kind of this beet flavor, which is, um, I really hate to say that it's vegetal because that makes it sound like it tastes gross, which is not the case. It's not the case at all. But it's very lovely and like earthy in there. And then I
Hmm.
think you get like a little bit of a pop maybe from that red wine as well that kind of doubles down on that earthiness there in the glass. Sip and enjoy. This felt fancy. It was beautiful, and I have to say, of the years we've been, trying our best. to humbly recreate these Fanny's cocktails. These 10 this year looked absolutely astonishing. They were gorgeous. Very excited to maybe try to recreate a couple of more of these just in our personal bar making
Right?
lives, right? For sure. So,
Yeah.
and that's going to put us at next year, Michaela. We need to make sure we get plans to go out to Fanny's, sometime at least kind of in the lead up to the Oscars and check these out for ourselves. So, special shout out to Fanny's. Go to fannysla.com for more information on the restaurant there. If you're ever in the area, do go. The museum's incredible. Fanny's is incredible. The food was amazing. The drinks were obviously amazing. And check them out on all the social medias. And we'll put links to that down in the show description. But now, Michaela, it is time to award the best Oscar of the year. The 97th Oscars. It's going to Anora. Spoiler warning. So let's take a quick break and we'll be right back to chat about it.
Annie, I got a kid who wants someone who speaks Russian. Let's go.
No, no, I'm eating my food.
You're killing me.
Spoiler warning for Anora. If you've not yet seen Anora, you really should because it won Best Picture for the 97th Oscars. It's totally worth your time, but we're going to talk about all the things. So if you've not seen it, go infuse some beets into some vodka, make yourself an Anora cocktail, go watch the movie, and then come back, and we are going to chat about it together on Drink the Movies.
That's right, absolutely. So this film just released in 2024. It was directed by Sean Baker, who is now the the winner of I think 4 Academy Awards, and stars Mikey Madison as Honora herself in the film. So, Michaela, what I thought we could do this film is very adult. On a side note, so if
Oh
you're
yeah.
if you're not of watching age or not interested in that, we're going to kind of go through the story here because it's really kind of broken down basically into more or less two halves. I think kind of more or less you get a little bit of tail in there, but it kind of runs the first hour on part of a story, and then the second hour is kind of the next part of the story here in this film. So I thought we'd kind of run through each of those sections a little bit, not getting into too much of the nitty gritty of what's going down here in this film, and then we could talk about it more as a whole because this thing was nominated for 6 Academy Awards. It won 5 of them, so I thought what we could do is kind of talk through each of those points, Michaela. So. Before we get started with the movie, you and I saw this in the theater back when it was out in the theater. I don't even remember for sure when that was. It was sometime over the summer, September, something like that, maybe. Um, but going into the theater, did you know anything about this movie? I think we both knew that it kind of had some Oscar buzz about it. Obviously, it had done well at some film festivals, things like that. Mikey Madison was being praised kind of for her acting in it. So it was something that we knew we needed to see, probably for Oscar time. But beyond that,
Right.
did you have any like expectation for the film? Did you know anything about Sean Baker? Did you know anything about Honora when we went in
No.
to see it that first time?
No, in a word, no. I knew nothing. I kind of like going in, especially for the Oscar films, because they're supposed to be, you know, critically acclaimed, right? Like all of the Oscar, if there's a lot of Oscar buzz around it, I on purpose do not learn anything about it because there's always this aftermath of who does what. There's a lot of dramas around how things are made sometimes, and that can color the way that you think about a film. So I on purpose try not to learn anything about any of the Oscar movies. I just go and watch them. So I had no idea. But in the first 5 minutes of this movie, I was like, oh, okay. All right. All right. We've talked about how it's very adult. There's Anora is a very beautiful dancer who works in a strip club. And it kind of starts highlighting that at the very beginning with some really great music. Uh, and shout out to the editing for that too. But yeah, I had no idea. But I do remember the first 2 minutes looking over at you and going, "Oh, okay, all right." Glad I
That's right.
glad,
It drops you right into the back room
right in.
of that New York strip club for sure. Yeah, and that's how the film gets started off. So let's go ahead and talk kind of about this first section here. And
Yeah.
yeah, you're basically just dropped into it. You're dropped into Honora's night, right? It's just a night for her at work, and we're spending about the first, I guess, I don't know, like 20 minutes of the film, kind of on this first night of her
Yeah.
working. at the strip club, right? So we're going around, we're seeing her interact with customers, with the other dancers and things like that. And then I guess kind of like the boss, I guess, or manager of the strip club comes in and is like, "Hey, Nora, you speak Russian or you understand Russian? We have a guy out here, so can you come and entertain him?" And that's kind of how we get introduced to Ivan, who's played by Mark Edelstein in the film. He's absolutely incredible. I really loved him the first time that I saw this. I really loved him the second time that I saw this, and for some reason, I don't think he got like the appropriate accolades for his acting in this because he's just
Agreed.
amazing at playing this Russian I don't know like doofus like kid like spoiled rich kid, right? That's exactly
Right.
what he is, and he plays it like off to a T. He's absolutely amazing at that. But we see them spend kind of this first little interaction here at the strip club, and that's going to obviously turn into this more substantial relationship here over the next kind of first part of this film.
Yeah. Yeah, at first, like this first half, it's almost like a like a Russian Cinderella story kind of, right? He is obviously very interested in having her dance for him. She's interested in his money. It seems to be a very transactional sort of relationship at first, but he asks to see her multiple times. Each time they kind of up the stakes as far as spending time together and whatnot. She spends some time at his house, which is amazing. I don't know if that's a real house in New York, but oh
It
my
is, yeah.
gosh,
Hmm.
it looked awesome. He was having a New Year's Eve party. She gets to invite a friend. It kind of culminates in him asking her to spend like a week with him, uh just kind of being his girlfriend. She wants 15 grand for that. There's a lot of lines that are kind of seem like they're pretty woman-esque, because she's like, I would have done it for 10, but I'm asking for 15. And they kind of form this interesting kind of relationship that at first you're not really sure how to take, and that's I think where Mikey Madsen's uh acting prowess really is it really shines, because you don't know at first, or you're pretty sure at first, that she's just interested in this transactionally, but he's, Ivan, or Vanya, they also call him Vanya. He's seems really interested in her, much more so than that. They have a good time together, they party together, they end up during this week of pretend relationship, they go to Vegas and they, are living their best life. I mean, I don't know, because I've never been a Russian oligarch, but I imagine that if I had millions and millions of dollars and I was 20,
I've
I
never
would
made
do
$15,000 in a week.
never done that either. But I mean, there's a lot of just decadence, right? It's like, and I love the way that sort of unfolds, because Anora's character, she lives way outside of New York, in this really kind of attached apartment with her sister. It does
Mhm.
not look like, it's not the same kind of life that Ivan lives at all. And so I think that when they get a chance to be together, in a much more permanent way, she's going to jump on that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. She does take to this lifestyle kind of like a fish to water, I have to say, here for her part. But yeah, you get to kind of explore, I guess, of this relationship being built. And that's one of the interesting things, I guess, about this film. And you and I talked about it after the first time we saw it. We talked about it again last night after we had a chance to rewatch this together. And it really does a good job, I think Sean Baker does here, and both kind of the way that it's edited, the way that it's shot, the way that the screenplay is written of it. It really keeps you kind of guessing throughout as to where Ivan or Vanya um, feels about Anora, and conversely how Anora really feels about him, because like you said, it is a very transactional relationship, obviously, because there's money being exchanged for this time that is being spent between the two. But you're really left kind of wondering, I guess, like how much is he really into you, is she really into you, like how much of that is true, or not. And there's a couple of instances where you think that certainly they really are into each other, and then kind of as the film plays out, that those dominoes get stacked up and kind of start to fall apart a little bit, I think, kind of as you move into the second part of the film, as to what each of them really were expecting to get out out of this. And it's important to remember that Yvonne is 21, and, and guys at 21 years old, not that mature, can say from experience.
Nope.
And Anora is 23, so definitely are at different kind of points, I guess, in their lives and their maturity levels at looking at this thing. I have to say, so this was nominated again for 6 Academy Awards, and two of them that it won were for screenplay, which comes to play, I think, more in the second half of the film. But the editing for me definitely was one in the first hour of this movie. It's the way that it's edited in the club there for that opening, like 15 to 20 minutes of the film. It is absolutely like staggering amount of things, the way that it's cut, and then kind of this whirlwind relationship, which starts out kind of at this mansion and then goes on to Vegas, which is edited just fantastically. Kind of this montage, I guess, of fun and sex and all of the things that they're doing here over the course of this week. And there's one in particular shot, which is exactly why it won the Academy Award. I'm pretty sure it's because when they decide to go and have their quick, Las Vegas wedding, and they do that, and they lean in to kiss, and it cuts to them in the same position on Fremont Street in Las Vegas, and the camera starts spinning around them. I think that cut in particular there in the edit is why it won the Academy Award.
I totally agree there. I what I picked this to win in our Oscar You Pick 'em for editing, and
Hmm.
nobody else in the history, like in any of the Oscar You Pick 'em contest contestants, picked this. But that was why, because that moment, you really feel like it's the Cinderella story. Like they're gonna live happily ever after. He
Hmm.
has proposed to her. He seems, he's very like they're kind of joking around, and then he's like, let's get married, and she's like, nah, you're out of your mind, and he's like, no, 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 like come on, like let's do it, why not, like we get along, what could go wrong? Like, and I'll be an American, I'll have to stay, like this is gonna be great. And at first she's like, okay, well, I want a giant ring. But then, like, you feel in this montage that you're talking about, this particular piece, there's no acting other than them kissing, right? There's no
Hmm.
dialogue, there's music. It is all about the editing of this scene that conveys this moment. And you're so overwhelmed with like happiness and joy and hope for these two. It's real strange because it's like, not obviously based in reality at all, but because of the way that it's edited, you really think they're going to make it. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
They've fallen in love, and what a lovely story, right? Rags to riches kind of thing, right?
Rags to like unfathomable riches for sure,
Right,
because that takes us into the second part of the film here. Obviously, Ivan is the son of this very very wealthy Russian oligarch, right? I like the, I guess, introduction that Anora has to his family is he has her Google his father's name there because she'd never heard of him, and apparently she should have heard of him. And when wind of this wedding gets back to the family, of course that's never going to stand, right? I don't know how marriage works for Russian oligarchs. I don't pretend to know that, but I assume it is not done to the exotic dancer that you met 2 weeks ago. Is not how that's done. So when the family catches wind of this, of course that's going to be bad. And you get kind of, I guess, like the head of this like families is, I guess, he's referred to as the godfather, I guess, of Ivan here, Toros, in the family here, who is, I guess, meant to be more or less babysitting Ivan while he's in the United States, to study or do whatever he's planning to do. So when word gets back to Toros, he's going to say, well, we can't have that. So we got to go grab this kid and grab this alleged new wife, see if this is real, right? Did this really actually happen, right? Or are they just pulling my leg? So he's going to send two of his thugs, his brother, who's named Garnick, who is played by Vashi Tovmason there. And you also have Igor, who's played by Yura Borisov, who was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, who did not win that award, but who is excellent in this role. I'm sure we'll talk about more. We'll talk more about him here, but they are sent to the house to basically go verify, is this wedding real? And if it is real, don't let these two leave the house because that's going to be bad. The family is stepping in and saying, Ivan, enough with your knucklehead activities. Get back to
right,
Russia. We're putting a stop to this. And that kind of starts us into the second act of this film.
right. Um, this scene at the house, it's hilarious, first of all. And you feel kind of awful for laughing because it is, again, I really think some of it, it's not just the acting in this case, it's the editing of it as well. Igor and Garnick are kind of knuckleheads themselves. Well, yeah, at least Garnick is, right? They come in. They have a key. Yvonne tells them to leave. Anora is like totally freaked out. She's like, "What are y'all doing here? We're married. You need to get out of this house." And they are trying to explain to her that this isn't good. You guys aren't actually married. That this isn't going to work. Like we've got to fix this. And she is completely just fiery about it. She's bewildered at why they would even be here, why this is a problem. They've got, Toros on the phone. Toros, by the way, is like at a christening of his own son or something, and he
Hmm.
leaves in the
Yeah.
middle of it because he's like the Russian family's gonna kill me, literally, like hang me out to dry if I don't fix this for them right now. Like,
Right.
and so he's like driving across New York City trying to get to this house. Um, there is a lot of physicality that happens, and it's not like it. I loved this scene because it could have had a much different tone because well, first of all, Ivan, as soon as he realizes that his parents are on their way, like literally getting on a plane and will be there the next day, he like takes off. He literally
Yeah.
just runs out of the house and leaves Honora there with these two thug guys who are physically restraining her. And so she or not at that point, but they won't let her leave the house. So then she gets real violent on her own. She's biting, she's kicking. She like kicks Garnick in the face. He ends up with like a major concussion the rest of the day. And I love that for her. I think it's awesome. But Igor like picks her up, restrains her, uses like a phone cord to tie her arms together. And, this whole time, you're not scared at all that she's going to get hurt. And I think that that's really interesting. I don't know exactly how they did that because I watched it the first time and I was amazed because it really could have gone either way, right? Like they could have
Hmm.
been much more physically nefarious with her, right? Like they were much bigger. It almost seemed like she was invincible, even though they had restrained her because anytime they let her go, she would kick them, she would bite them, and it just seemed so hilarious because she was just like, "Nah, you're not gonna do this to me. I'm gonna fight for my marriage. And even when they say, hey, your husband just ran off and left you, I don't think that there's much of a marriage here. She's like, no, 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 it's fine. Like, and I loved her spirit in this particular part of the scene.
Yeah, Micah Madison does a really good job here in this piece because you can kind of see like that she's holding on, like, right, she's like championing this light of the relationship, but you can see like these things starting to weigh on her, right? As they're saying that she was this prostitute that Yvonne married and that it's a sham wedding, and you can kind of see that like those realizations are slowly like settling in on her, right? It wasn't bad enough that he ran off and left her, right? Like he couldn't wait for like 2 seconds for her to get dressed to go with him, that he ran off, but then that he wasn't answering her phone calls. And yeah, you don't know how this interaction is going to go with these gangsters. You don't really know like how like criminal of actors these
Right.
are, right? Are they really like bad apples? Or are they really just going to go and end her? But I guess maybe her importance to this family becomes much heavier after they find out that they were in fact married, right? I can't do anything to her now because they were married, so she needs to stay alive long enough to get this thing annulled, or that's going to carry on being a bad time for this family. So you get kind of that first scene, and then kind of the next stretch of the film is about them trying to track down Ivan, right? They're going off Garnick and Igor and Toros along with Anora there and in the car and trying to go to all the places that a 21 billionaire would a 21-year-old billionaire would go, right? So
Right.
you go to search out like the friends to see if any of them have heard of about his whereabouts or if he's contacted any of them. You go to like some clubs that he might have gone to, and eventually Honora gets the call from one of her friends there at the strip club that she'd worked at that he had turned back up there. So they're going to go and get him so they can take him to the courthouse. They can get this thing annulled. And I think for me, that's probably my highlight of the second part of the film is just Mikey Madison in the section. She gets very volatile there at the house, obviously, when when they're coming in. She's very combative about this, but you can just kind of see like the weight of the reality of this setting in for her potentially,
Mm,
to some end, and that she, kind of bought in to this fantasy, I guess, a little bit more so than Yvonne did, obviously, at least in my estimation.
sure. Yeah. I mean, and I think that what we also see is the relationship between Igor, who's one of the thugs that's there, right? And he's the one who like physically restrains her. Um, he's very quiet. Like Igor doesn't say a whole lot. But he is watching her constantly. And he sees this realization slowly happen over the course of hours, right? Because it takes them a long time to before they find Ivan and then go through the process of trying to get the marriage annulled in both states because they forget to tell the world that they got married in Vegas. So they try to do it in New York. That doesn't work. They have to actually go to Vegas and get it done. And the whole time, Anora is very proud and she is continuing to say to everybody who will listen that they were really married. This was real. This was not, I mean, and she's going to be part of that family and they need to accept it. And it's amazing the way that shroud of truth kind of falls over her and the way that her reactions and then the way Igor reacts to her understanding that this family is never going to let that happen. And even Ivan probably knew that. And
Hmm.
this was Ivan is a literally just a giant man child with a bazillion dollars. And this was a plaything to him. This was a pretend fantasy of I'm going to come to America. I'm going to meet some beautiful woman. We're going to have a real good time. Yeah, I'm going to buy her a 4 carat ring and we're going to pretend to get married, but it's not real. And that's where I love the juxtaposition here because the beginning of the film, I was sure she was going to be playing him, and at the end, he really played her because she really thought that he was serious,
Hmm.
and Igor sees this whole thing, and he ends up even taking up for her in front of the family at the end to say, "Hey, I think Ivan should at least apologize." And the mom, of course, is not having any of that. She's like, "We don't, this girl is nothing. This girl is garbage to us. We do not care about her at all. She is just a plaything." And um, that the way that Igor kind of reacts and to that and connects with Honora at the very end is kind of the culmination of that paradigm shift
Hmm.
for
Yeah,
Honora,
for
you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And Sean Baker does this really, really well, kind of in the shot construction of this. But anytime we see Igor in the film, he's always behind Honora's character, even, from the time that he first gets to the house, he's sitting, slightly behind her on the couch. He ends up, restraining her from behind. We'll see him sitting behind her in the car as they're traveling around. You'll kind of see his face. You'll see him walking behind her, right? So he's always like literally has her back kind of throughout this whole thing. He's never standing out in front of her. He never feels the need to protect her because she can certainly do that on her own, right? She's
Right?
knocked this guy's nose through his brain basically, and she's bit him, right? Toros is going to pose no threat to this girl, so he always literally is kind of standing to the rear of her, right, as a supportive kind of character to Anora throughout this, and I thought that was really really well done, kind of throughout the way that these shot constructions are working there for that. And yeah, I mean, you get like the family coming together, and then to kind of just double back on that, was this just a plaything? Was this like a fantasy sort of a thing for Yvonne, who literally can afford to do anything in the world that you want to do? Like you see them go to Vegas, and you see every high-end bottle of liquor that Michaela and I wish that we had in our own liquor cabinets, just sprawled out on the bar, ready to go. The whole world is the play place for this guy, and it's summed up very, very well, right? We're introduced to the Russian family there as they fly in, they get in for the day. The mom is, of course, no nonsense. They're coming in saying, "Okay, get in the plane. We're going to Las Vegas." And Honora does finally get that moment with Devon, who is too drunk and too hungover to really talk to her anytime until they're climbing up onto his parents' plane. And she's like, "What are you not going to say anything?" And he's like, "What did you expect?" Like, of course, my parents told me to get on this plane. I'm going to get on this plane, right? So kind of the whole time, I think she was hoping and holding a candle that this guy was going to step up and say something, right, to support her, to support this decision, to speak out on her behalf. And it's at that moment when it realizes to her and it realizes to you, I guess, as the audience, because it still kind of leaves you with some false hope there that he never intended to do that, I don't think.
No.
And he even says almost as much. And watching it back the second time, I'm like, oh, Honora, you're not getting it. Because even when he proposes to her, he's like, we can get married and then I can stay in America. Right? That was his proposal to her, right? And he says it in English and he says it in Russian, and then she's like, "Are you serious?" And he's like, "Yeah, I just said it twice." And she only picked up on the part of that she wanted to hear, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, yeah, because you think when he says the first time you watch it, when you think he's saying it twice, he's actually saying that he wants to marry her twice. Really, he's like, let's party in America longer. Let's get
Yeah.
married so I can party longer, you know? Yeah. It really kind of breaks your heart at the end because you know, and it's so weird how it happens. Like, this is why this film won Best Picture. I mean, because at the beginning, you have a very different idea of who Anora is and what her goals are in life. And, she's just taking this guy for a ride. She's going to milk him for all it's worth. And really, at the end of the day, he's the one who milked her. You know what I mean? He's the one who took the goodness that she had, not the other way around. And it definitely uh, is evident at the end that even when Igor, because so Igor sees all this happening, and that's why he says, I think it's important that Ivan apologizes. And of course, that
Mhm.
doesn't happen. But Igor is able at the very, very end of the film, they don't even let her fly back with them. Like, they put her on a plane, and she
Right.
has
Mhm.
to, and Igor is making sure that she's taken care of, and they spend the last night in the house, so she can gather all her things and get the heck out of there. But he takes her to her house, and he manages to sneak back the ring, the 3 or 4 carat ring, and he gives it to her so that she can sell it or do something with it. Because he thinks that was a promise, right? That was something that she should have gotten to keep. Um,
Mhm.
and so, the very last scene is, it's very confusing for me as a woman to watch in a lot of ways, because I feel like as a thank you, she like gets on top of him and tries to initiate sex. But it's just too much, because that's never something that he wanted. There's times even the night before she gives him an earlobe because she accuses him of wanting to do that. And wanting to assault her at the very beginning, right? When he had to restrain
Mhm.
her. And, you learn more about Igor in this whole scene, in the second half of this film where they're looking for Ivan. Igor is the muscle between Garnick and Igor. He's the one who is able to break things, and he steals a guy's bat. Like, he could have done any sort of damage to Honora that he wanted if he had wanted to, and he never
Mhm.
wanted to, because that's not who he was. And he certainly wasn't going to assault her. So when she gets on top of him in that car and they're together, he's like trying to connect with her, and she just completely breaks down, and it's an incredibly powerful moment. Um, it caught my breath the first time, and I was visibly changed. And the second time I saw it, it was the same. I mean, it's such a powerful scene, because the one thing she thought that he wanted, because everybody seems to only want that from her, he does not
Mhm.
want that. He wants to be able to look at her face, and kiss her and like have a connection. And she is just kind of breaks down onto his chest. It's really just very beautiful and sad, and Yeah.
Hmm.
Is amazing acting. Mickey Madsen is a triumph with Igor in this scene, and yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's really amazing because, that's, she never, I guess, felt that sort of attention, right? As you mentioned, Michaela, that was not the attention she was used to getting, especially, from men, being, I guess, objectified, I guess, throughout her
Hmm.
life, probably, up until that moment. And she finally is literally seen, and, it kind of is overwhelming to her, right? It was never anything that Yvonne wanted, right? They would have their intimate moments together, and then it was immediately like back to video games or to
Right.
immediately, smoking pot or any of those things. There was, you mentioned kind of, flying back. She's flying back, coach there. I love like the imagery of that because they're at this, I guess, like annulment office in Las Vegas, which I guess is something that they have in Las Vegas. That makes sense. That makes sense. And she's there, and you'll see her literally after, Igor, asks that, he at least apologized, and the family's like, absolutely not, because, newsflash, anyone out there, billionaires don't apologize. That's how they get to become billionaires, I guess. But she literally like sheds the skin, right? She takes off the scarf, throws it at the mom. She takes off the coats, that she's wearing. So she's literally like shed this like facade, of a life that she had put on. And then you see her flying coach back, right? She flew to Las Vegas on a private plane in, I don't know, like $100,000 coat or something like that,
Right.
with a $5 million ring on her finger. And then she is, flying back in coach, right? Like her life is literally reverted back to what it was. So it's like a rags to riches, back to rags, and then, eventually does, get that moment that she had, hoped for throughout the entirety of the film, and then at the end it's too overwhelming for her. So that is Anora. Like I said, it's very adult, but it's very much worth your time, if you're okay with that, to see. It's a beautiful tale. It is well acted. It is stunning to look at. The editing piece through the first hour, as I mentioned, is absolutely incredible. It's insane. The screenplay is nice and tidy. So I think we've hit kind of on all of the big ones there. Let's talk about Mikey Madison a little bit more here, who won the Academy Award for Best Actress. There was kind of some back and forth between her and Demi Moore. Apparently, Mikey Madison and Demi shared some texts, I guess, after the fact. So that is great. You always love to hear stuff like that. Let's talk about her performance in this, I guess, kind of in through the first section and into the latter section. Any highlights for you, Michaela, or just anything you wanted to point out to listeners there?
Yeah, I mean, I think she has to do a lot of transitional kind of work, right? Like that whole character at the beginning, the the shift that she creates is pretty awesome. Now, aside from like the choreography parts, the choreographed pieces of this film, because again, it's very adult. She's a dancer, so there's a lot of physicality that has to happen.
Hmm.
There's a lot of physicality that happens between her and Ivan, right? And that is beautiful because she's very good at it. Like but the inner work is more kind of distracting and stunning to me. Again, the scene where she's telling them to get out of the house and she's fighting with these guys, that had to have been choreographed. It was beautifully done, and it's so strange because I felt like a horrible person the first time watching it and laughing as they're like wrestling her to the ground because
Hmm.
I'm just it's like, how is she going to get out of this? But yet she's still trying to
It's
get
very
out of it.
it's very slapsticky for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. But she's just incredible. And there's so many layers and that you start to really understand at the end. The whole point of the second half was she was like, I'm going to talk to Ivan. I'm going to get him alone. I'm going to have a moment with him and he's going to stand up for me. And when that doesn't happen, like you said, like the way that she portrays, like the moment when the mom is telling her you're going to get on this plane or else I'm going to ruin your life and I can do it because I have a ton of money and you are nothing.
Hmm.
And she gets on the plane and that is the time. That's the only time where she finally kind of reneges and doesn't tell somebody to F off and bite them or whatever, right? Is when that woman isn't even looking at her and is like, you are going to get on this plane, and if you don't, I'm gonna ruin the lives of everybody that you like and care about. because I
Mhm.
can. And just from that moment on, like Anora is not a different person, but like a changed, a changed entity. And it's she's really good in this. And I'd never heard of her before. I'd never seen her before. Um, if I have, then I didn't realize it was her.
Right. Yeah.
So I was just blown away, blown away. And it's so tough because both her and Demi Moore had transformational roles, right?
Mhm.
This year. And so I know it was a tough call, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, she had a small part in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think, is one of the
Mm,
girls on the ranch there, potentially. But yeah, it was not familiar with her at all. So I'm very interested, I guess, from that point, from just witnessing her career to see, what happens for Mikey Madison going from here, because this is kind of it's a pretty specific role, this one. So I'd be interested to see, kind of what comes her way next, because certainly there'll be a lot of things, because she's absolutely like staggering in this. And like I said, kind of my favorite aspect of the film is just watching like her, like, kind of convey the weight of all of that. And, almost by the end of it, you mentioned she kind of hesitates there. Before she gets on the plane and, kind of relents to this family. There is kind of another moment of that outside of the courthouse there in New York, when she's standing
mm,
outside of the car and is kind of reluctant to give in. And she does a really great job here. There's a lot of like unspoken things that happen in this film, and particularly in her, and I guess kind of the way that, Mikey Madison is portraying that thought process of, she's almost like disappointed in herself more that she, let herself get hoodwinked by this guy, than she is in the fact that she's in the situation, right? It's, because I would assume that, Honora is someone who likens herself as pretty street smart. So I would assume that you'd have to
mm,
be, for the profession that she's in, you're not in the business of being hoodwinked by people more often than not. And she kind of let herself buy into this fantasy that Yvonne laid out for her. Yura
mm.
Borisov, who is nominated for supporting actor, did not win, is absolutely incredible in this. He has like
Yep.
such um, expressive like eyes throughout the film, because he doesn't say a lot. Even up to like the last like kind of bit of dialogue when it's just him and Honora, she's really doing the bulk of the talking there,
Yep.
right? He's kind of speaking in between his Russian and broken English there, which I thought that the film also did really well. Because it allowed for, going back and forth between the Russian and the English in the way that it, kind of, set the tone with that, she could understand it, better than she could speak it. So, they were willing to go kind of back and forth in that. Yeah, he's so
Hmm.
expressive, just in his, just in his face and his eyes and things. You could always kind of get a read on exactly what he thought about the situation and what he thought about Honora. He was always doing, nice things for her. He covers her up on the airplane, flying coach. He pours her, I don't know, probably like $1,000 glass of vodka on the private plane there. He was always, doing whatever he could to, like I said, have her back. I'd already mentioned that. Any other highlights
Hmm.
from Yura Borisov's performance here, Michaela?
I mean, it didn't really occur to me. He's so careful with her, even when he's restraining her physically. It's amazing. And it's the subtlety to me is what's so amazing about it is you really learn more about Igor than you learn about Ivan, right? And
Hmm.
Igor does so much less talking, right? It again, it's all, as you say, it's all silent. It's all the subtlety. It's all within his expression. Um, I mean, he says it best to Honora. He says it's good that you're not part of that family. That family, it's not a good family. It would not have been good for you. And she doesn't want to hear that, but she's also knows that it's true.
Hmm.
And he has always seen her. He saw her at the very beginning, right? When he walks in, he's kind of dumbfounded. And the way he just says, "Hi, I'm Igor." Like he is taken aback by her. And throughout this whole time is kind of this just connected person that's gonna like have her back, as you say. It's he's amazing. I was sorry that he didn't get the award. That it was going to be real tough this year, but he was amazing, and I really hope that both of them find other roles in mainstream media so that we can see them more, because they were both just triumphantly good. They were both amazing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you would, I guess, think through the portrayal here of Igor, that he and Anora would have, more things of common, right? A more, common background and, similar kind of outlook of life, and they're both being viewed kind of transactionally. Her obviously, for her work there at um, at the club, and these interactions that she's had with Yvonne, and his more transactionally of like, we're going to pay you to go, do this job, right? To go
Bust some
restrain these people
heads.
or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever he's, being told to do, right? So his value is also very transactional there in the film as well. Then obviously he gives her the ring back at the end, which is an amazing token, right? That's a life-changing sort
Yeah.
of a thing that he could have kept, right? He didn't need to give her that ring, right? He didn't need to do that, but he knew that it was hers and that she had earned it, um, by all accounts there, which makes that last section even more stunning and profound, right? Says
Right.
how does someone like Honora repay that gesture for sure, and she does it the only way she knows how, and the only thing that he wanted to was to see her and to know that she knew that he had seen her. And that's pretty great. Best director is basically the wrap up of all of those things. So we don't need to get too much into that, Michaela. So let's just talk about best picture. Kind of in my head, when you take a look at what is going to win Best Picture at the Academy Awards, there's kind of like a checklist, right? Like it has to do all of these things, and it doesn't have to do them all flawlessly, but it has to do them all pretty well, right? It has to be well written, it has to be well filmed, it has to be well edited, the acting has to be great. It has to do like all of those things, right? Like all of the foundational things of movie making it needs to
Hmm.
do well, right? And that's not to discount any of the other aspects of filmmaking, costume design, hair and makeup, all of those things need to be really well done in order for you to be best picture winner. And certainly this ticked off all of those boxes to make it to the high prize. But I guess I'll let you kind of sum it up and your feelings, because as I mentioned, I think this was your favorite film of the year. Was there one kind of thing that this movie did in your eyes that put it above the other nine nominees?
Um, well, it did a couple things. It changed the way I felt about sex work. It changed the way I felt about the idea of fantasy and love, like connection. For me, a movie, there's good movies and then there's great films, and a great film is gonna do something to my paradigm. That for me is important. It might be uncomfortable and it might be really hard, but that part is just as important to me as whether or not it's entertaining and fun, right? This does both. It's, especially at the beginning, when they're, kind of falling in love, or, they're in Vegas and they're just having the best time, and you're filled with this feeling of hope and joy, and like it's all going to work out, and then at the end you're filled with a different sort of like real connection, and you summed it up right. Like the one thing that she wanted was to be seen really by somebody. That's the one thing Igor did, and it just kind of I breaks down like the walls. And so that's what it did, for me, more than probably any of the other films. Um, this was a year of really good movies too. I mean, all 10 nominations were just, well, most of them were deserved.
Mhm.
We could talk about that, but I mean, I think for me, that's why this deserved to win, and that's why it was my favorite. Is it truly changed the way I felt about a lot of things. And it was so subtle. It did it without being in your face, and
Mhm.
I really loved that. I really loved that piece. That I think that there's art in the way that you tell that story without it making you feel gross and dirty. And it did it.
Mhm.
I don't know. I can't. Kudos to everybody who made it, because I don't know how. Um, I don't know how they did it, but they managed it. It's yeah.
Yeah, there was an astonishing level of nuance to the film
Yeah.
here, which is, on one hand, kind of a straightforward story, but yeah, there's so much kind of layering to it in the way that it unfolds, which is, comedic at times and dramatic at other times. But, it never kind of leans too hard into one direction. I
Hmm.
don't think, right? Which keeps it light enough that you can stay like engaged with it. Like you could tell the story in a way that's very heavy and very sad and awful, right?
Right.
You can tell it that way. You can tell it in a way that is purely comedical, but this towed the line, I think, of both of those really really well, and did an astonishing job. So that is the Best Picture winner for the 97th Academy Awards. We had a lot of good conversation over on the Discord about Nora, kind of following up on the win there and the post-Oscar aftermath there. So that was a lot of fun. You can check out our Discord. The link is down in the show notes down there. So I always love talking about the Oscar stuff with people down there. So that's one of the places you can connect with us. You can also find us on all the social medias. We are at Drink the Movies on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. If you want to see pictures of our attempt at recreating that beautiful Anora cocktail, you can see that on our website. It's www.drinkthemovies.com. And that's where you go because it's got all the episodes recaps there, all of the cocktails that we've ever made on all like 209 of these, 208 of these now. So that's pretty amazing stuff there. You can check that out on the website. It's also got links to the merchandise shop. It's got links to Drink the Video Games. It's got links to the Patreon, which is a lot of fun. We did a fun Oscar hangout with all of our patrons there last week. Had a really good time with that. That's patreon.com/drink the movies. So, Michaela, if they want to go ahead and make sure that they're subscribed to the podcast, we have a lot of fun stuff coming up this year. There's a bunch of new releases we're going to be talking about, including one next week. We're going to be covering some classics. There's probably room for adjustment if anyone wants to, throw us a movie recommendation our way. We're probably open to suggestion. We always are willing to tackle any
Yeah.
cocktail or movie that people throw our way. But the best thing they want to do is make sure they get subscribed to the podcast. Where can they do that?
You can find us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Good Pods, anywhere where Spotify podcasts are supported and distributed. If you're hearing us right now, whatever rectangle you're on, there's a subscribe button. I promise. We do 2 drops a week. We have our lobby bar that's super easy, quick cocktails, talking about what's going on, and then our deep dives like the one you're listening to right now. If you're liking what you're hearing, leave us a 5-star review. You can share us on all the social medias. We're so knocked out by the community that you all have built around movies and cocktails. So we really appreciate all the support. It really helps us get all the Drink the Movies goodness out there.
Absolutely. And one last special shout out to Fanny's. Go pay Fanny's
Yes,
a visit. Thank you so
please
much
do.
for creating these awesome cocktails and giving us some inspiration here in our own cocktail drinking and making. And hopefully we get back out there to see you all again very soon. So with that, Michaela, that is going to wrap up Nora. We'll be back next week to chat about another film. But for now, let's go ahead and put an end to this year's Oscar season. And we'll talk to everyone next time on
Drink
Drink
the
the
Movies.
Movies.
I don't think I can do a quote because there's so much language, but
That's true. It even made the monologue. How many times they said drop the F bomb.
right, right.
Mikey Madison said it 10,000 times in that one scene at least. So
Worth it. Worth it. So good.
worth it.